question we are asking tonight is Trump a member of the establishment? I believe the correct answer is that he wasn't really in 2016, but probably is now. To understand the establishment, it's not an organization. It is the whole of the group of people who have influence over how national decisions are made. In a way, it's the collective output of national decisions. It is a group that is in constant contention with each other and has ever shifting alliances. Part of the etiquette of the establishment is that you should never end round the establishment using people who are not in the great ruling clique. In other words, populism is a bad thing to them. There's another rule, which is wait your turn. Now, there are some people in the conspiracy camp that believe Trump's victory in 2016 was an establishment promotion. The idea that Trump's victory as an outsider was only a game of appearances designed to make it look like he was an outsider, but in fact, he was an insider the whole time. Now, if one's net worth is over $1 billion, they probably have at least some tertiary influence on the establishment. However, I think too much happened that would have been intolerable to the establishment to believe the idea that the whole Trump election was some sort of setup. It was Jeb Bush's turn to be the GOP nominee. And as a member of a dynastic political family, it's impossible to believe that Jeb would willingly be humiliated and have his career ended by a loudmouth from New York calling him names. The attempted coronation of Hillary Clinton, accompanied by months of the victory doing pre victory laps, was an enormous blow to the credibility of legacy media and Clinton. The Trump administration spent the bulk of its 4 years having public fights with underlings in the administration. These are not the hallmarks of an insider. In the end, his accomplishments, with some exceptions, were fleeting. Now, there are always factions within an establishment. A functional establishment knows how to build compromises that allows things to move forward in a seamless way. Establishments go through phases. They have an empathetic phase where the establishment views the well-being of the people as part of the establishment's mission. Then there's the explanatory phase where the establishment has goals that are not necessarily beneficial to the people. So they use their powers to convince the people to support or at least not oppose these efforts. During this phase, the establishment is still looking out for the good of the people. So there's enough goodwill there that the people accept things they can't see as beneficial because their situation is improving. And then there's the phase we're in now, where the establishment appears to view people as an evolutionary failed subrace that lacks the intellect to understand the great things the establishment is trying to do. Trump used this third phase establishment condition to use populism as an end round and win the 2016 election. I don't get the impression that Trump had a broad philosophy of governance in mind when he ran and then he won. I think dissident elements of the establishment reached out to him during his administration, and during the last 4 years he's been out of office, they've continued to work with him to bring him into the orbit of the dissident faction. So, what are these two factions within the establishment? And by the way, there's a lot more, but these are the two dominant ones. Uh, how do they differ? Well, the dominant force is what I've been describing as the neoliberal order. The competing out of power force is the multipolar order. Both these factions are progressive in nature. The multipolar order has many minority allies that are not progressive. The neoliberal order backs the concept of a US dominated world order that functions through proxy organizations like the UN and NATO. It's very hubristic in nature and believes in the infallibility of their goals. Multipolar order differs because they believe that the US has overreached, and if it does not retrench using regional partners, this overreach will eventually catastrophically damage the US and its world order. The dominant neoliberal order is against nationalism at home and abroad. It views such countries as Russia, Israel, and North Korea as dangers. It tolerates third world nationalism, but fears it in the West because they see it as counter to their goals. It expects others, the members of the neoliberal order in other countries, to abandon their security interests in the favor of the US doing it for them. For example, Europe. In return, the US guarantees free trade and open trade routes around the world. At home, the neoliberal order allows transnationalist organizations and ideologies to propagate in order to undermine American nationalism. Neo Marxist ideologies such as DEI, CRT, and environmental apocalypse cults look towards the United States as an outcast from the world, which can only be saved by joining in with the rest of the world to solve these great problems. Now, the minority multipolar order favors liberal nationalism, which is the general condition the United States has had through most of its history, but has been changing since World War II. I have another video out there on liberal nationalism if you need the definition for it. Um, Also, the minority favors creating functional regional powers to shoulder the burden of the international order. In other words, the creation of independent military alliances that operate outside the US leadership but are still friendly to US interests. So, how does Trump fit into all this? Most of his major policy changes seem to mirror the issues of the minority multipolar order. Some stuck, most didn't. The neoliberal order believed that by integrating China into the economies of the West, the result would be a more liberal and multinational China. The actual result was a stronger, more bellicose, and nationalist China that actually borders on being an ethno state ideology. The we can never fail hubris of the neoliberals constantly looks at this failure as just a setback that will eventually correct once a better policy prescription has been found. They refuse to see that their attempt to integrate China had failed. Trump implemented anti Chinese tariffs and worked hard to reinvigorate Japan's military as a country that could partner independently with other Pacific countries. Despite the outcry at the time, the Biden administration has not only kept these tariffs, but increased some of them. We are seeing increasing cooperation between regional powers that were content to always let the US lead. In terms of how the establishments change course, especially ours, this was almost revolutionary. Chinese ethno nationalism probably played a role in the neoliberals accepting that China wasn't really part of the big family of nations, at least for now. So, this is an area where Trump doctrine changed things and it stuck. Now, Israel is an example where Trump moved towards the multinationalist viewpoint and the neoliberals clapped back. The Abraham Accords were designed to normalize all Arab Israeli relationships with the explicit goal of creating a vast military alliance that was a partner but was not subservient to the US. Part of this included a massive economic build out of Gaza and part of the Negev Desert, which currently is considered outright Israeli territory, which would have been reincorporated back as Palestinian land. This would have been, basically created a de facto two-state solution for the Israelis and Palestinians, with, of course, some huge security concessions towards Israel. The Arab states have been signing the pre agreements despite a lack of agreement from the Palestinian Authority on this. This achievement would have resulted in any other leader, or at least their subordinates, receiving the Nobel Peace Prize. Legacy media pretty much had an information blackout on this process, and what little was reported was very dismissive. The early parts of this agreement are already in place and appear to be beneficial. The Biden administration has pulled all diplomatic efforts from continuing the process and has removed funded money that was allocated. Why? I suspect it's because Israel is too nationalistic and the resulting Arab Israeli alliance would have been too independent of the United States. So, this is an example of Trump attempt at turning the establishment towards a new way of looking at things was pretty much shut down. We're going to kind of continue this thought process in another video talking about what went on with Russia, essentially before, during, and after the Trump administration. But in the comments below, how many of you were aware of the Abraham Accords? And did you realize that we had maintained our Chinese tariffs and actually increased a lot of them? Do you have any thoughts on why that's happening? Do you agree or disagree with my take on essentially Trump's joust with the establishment and the neoliberal order? Please smash the like button. If the YouTube algorithms brought you here and you're not a regular subscriber, please look at my other titles and consider subscribing. And if you know somebody who might find this interesting, please share it with them. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.